Welcome to the CyberGov podcast, where you'll learn how to build a cybersecurity strategy that will help you earn more revenue across your government contracting business. All right, welcome back to the CyberGov podcast. I'm happy because today we have Brian Chidester, head of global innovation and strategy at Adobe. There's a lot of things that he does. One specifically really good thing that I listen to his podcast, the Government Huddle, right? And that particular piece is pivotal because not only do you have like great information there, but I like the way you interview folks. I think I kind of mentioned this to you before. You interview folks very well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hot Ones. You kind of remind me of Sean from Hot Ones, where he has very good questions. But if you haven't seen Hot Ones, take a look at it. Take a look at it.
That's the hot sauce one, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I've heard about that. I've gotten a few people that I see like the clips like on social media. I haven't watched a full episode yet, but I think the thing that I always see, he always pulls great guests. So he has to have pretty cool questions.
Yes, he does. Yes, he does.
Awesome.
But he's a great interviewer. In addition to that, so are you, amongst other things, and I would be doing you some injustice just by naming those few things. So if you wouldn't mind expanding on a few things that you do over at Adobe and the podcast as well.
Yeah, no, I first of all, I appreciate it, like the opportunity to be on here. Thank you so much, because I'm a fan of your podcast too. And one of the reasons is kind of what you were saying to me. I love how you're interviewing people. And I think the idea is just that authenticity around it. People want to be part of a conversation and they learn better that way. And I don't know about you, but like when I'm listening to a podcast conversation, my brain wanders because I'm like, oh, do I agree with that? Do I not agree with that? And then I'm listening, but not listening and thinking through it. And it's just, it's a cool way to do it. And long form within our space is fewer and far between. So I think it's the best way to learn, in my opinion. It's one of the reasons why I love doing it, is because I get to learn from really smart people that can come on and teach me some things too. I get a front row seat. So you said I ask great questions. A lot of it's just because I get super curious and I want to be able to learn more about what they're doing. So
absolutely.
So at Adobe, head of global strategy and innovation for our public sector. And really what I get to do is help our customers be successful, right? I like to say, by any means necessary. Ray Lewis is his quote, but by any means necessary, right? So whatever they need in the given moment, if they need help with strategy, being able to do that. If they need help with me connecting them to somebody because there's a use case that they want to take advantage of, that type of thing. I do a lot of speaking at events and a lot of content as well to try to scale out some of those best practices. But one of my favorite things to do though is kind of sit down with people, get in a room, get on a whiteboard, something like that, and just kind of go through some of their needs, understanding kind of where they're at, where they want to be, and guide them in a path to get to where that is. So the cool thing with Adobe is we have a lot of levers to pull to be able to help them do that. And not just your traditional Acrobat and PDF kind of portfolio or Photoshop, but really running the gamut into customer experience, content development, deployment. It just runs the gamut. So it's so cool to be able to have that portfolio in our back pocket to help them be successful. So I'm loving my time there.
And Brian, you talked about quite a few things that you do, and I'm curious about the skills and how you develop them. And I'm asking that question because you talked about content, sitting down with individuals to help them maximize and get what they need out of Adobe, taking that to a whiteboard, like all of these things and skills that you have. How did you develop them? Was it something that you developed along the way? Was that intent, like specifically, I am intently trying to develop these skills, or did that come natural?
Great question. Very intentional, and still very intentional about developing, as I know you are, and I'm sure the listeners are. I made a very conscious decision. Maybe I always say it was a few years ago, but now we're pressing like a decade now because we're getting older. My background, my background is in marketing empirically, and I think I just hit a point where I knew I was being effective in what I was doing, but I felt like there was like another gear I could shift into, another area I could untap to be more strategic and more valuable to not only our organization, but to the people that we're working with. And I was working for a company called Appian at the time, which is a low-code platform. And there was somebody there that I sort of looked up to in a very similar type role that I have now at Adobe. And just the way that he was able to sit in a meeting, break things down for the people that we're talking to, bring insights and perspectives and have his own point of view on things. I think just being able to do that and help them in that way, it felt very, very much tip of the spear, more proactive and not just a reactive marketing entity. So to the heart of your question, it was very intentional to look at that individual and say, I want to align myself closer to what he's doing and understand the skill sets that he's leveraging to be able to do that. So I was very focused on it and would ask him questions all the time. I'm grateful to be able to go back to him recently and tell him that he was kind of sort of a mentor to me, whether he knew it or not. But definitely had a lot of questions for him and loved giving perspectives. And if you listen to my podcast, you know I'm not one to shy away from my opinions on things either. So being able to have educated opinions on certain things that I felt that could be valuable. And a lot of it, it's not something that just sort of manifests itself. A lot of it is, and you and I were talking earlier when we were talking about our kids, a lot of it's pattern recognition, right? Mm-hmm. Working with customers all over the world to say, oh, okay, I see exactly where you are. And I know what those next steps are logically to help you kind of in your evolution, right? Based on what experiences I've seen, patterns I've recognized, and let me help you and let me show you where these customers have gone and kind of bring that value to you. So it's really not rocket science, but it is a lot of fun.
It sounds like you were very intentional about that and had a mentor, a great mentor, by the way, whoever the gentleman is, a great mentor, by the way, that helped you out. And you ask questions because sometimes, folks want to be mentored or they want a mentor, but they're reluctant to really ask the questions to get to where they want to go.
Yeah.
So what I'm hearing from you is you asked a lot of questions, and there's something that I go by all the time. Usually ABCs, you talk about always be closing. For me, it's always be curious. Like I ask a lot of questions, and some people are like, can you stop, please?
Yeah, no, I think curiosity is a huge aspect of having a growth mindset. And some of the advice that I've given people in the past, especially, and this is something I sort of learned from having my podcast, from reaching out to people to ask them if they'd be willing to come on and speak to me, is so many people out there want to help, especially in our government technology community. They want to help. And reaching out to people, asking questions is not a burden. I used to think it was. I think a lot of us think it is. But it's really not. And it's a great opportunity for you to leverage the economies of scale you can get by somebody who has wisdom and experience in that space that maybe you haven't gotten into yet, or refine some of the things that you might have a point of view on something and they might give you a perspective that might help strengthen your point of view in a certain way. Whatever the need is, reaching out to people is one of the first things I like to do, because I learned through having conversations. I learned through trying to understand other people's experiences, and that's been a huge benefit to me.
Absolutely. I really appreciate that answer. And having a mentor has been excellent for me. Like one of my mentors from Microsoft, Dorian Orr, has been, amazing. Helped me out quite a bit to get to where I'm at today. And I'm also curious, as you were talking about that, and you were speaking about, being with customers and pattern recognition, things like that. When there's an opportunity and you're speaking with a customer and you may not know what to do at that point, maybe you don't know the answer. Maybe I'm talking to a customer and we're talking about a cybersecurity solution and I'm not sure of that answer. How would a government contractor or just somebody in that position handle that?
I think one of the first things to go if you make a mistake is credibility. And it's one of the most important things that you can have, because government leaders, government organizations, they want trusted partners. And no matter what technology space you bring, whether it's cybersecurity, whether it's any other myriad of things they're looking to procure, they want a partner in whatever that journey is, and they want to know that they can trust that partner, whether it's from just a genuine relationship trust, whether it's from a credibility or thought leadership trust and experience but that's so vital. And the worst thing you can do is pretend like you know the answer. I think we've all been in the situations where you don't know the answer.
Absolutely.
What I try to do is I try to lean in and ask more questions to make sure that when I do come back with the information that they need, that it's very specific, that it's very bespoke to exactly what they're looking for, and try to understand the why behind what they're asking. Because I think understanding the why can unlock some of the strategic vision that they have that maybe was hidden behind the question or they hadn't really spoken about. So I think asking more questions to get to really the heart of what they're asking is usually where I start. That way, when I do come back, I can come back with something that is more comprehensive in value for them, and helps to build that credibility, build that partnership, and know that I also understand where they're trying to go in the long run.
That's a really, really good answer. I'm zeroing in on the why. And that's also self-aware. I like that you mentioned there's going to be times where, you know what, you may not have the answer directly, but asking more questions and being self-aware that, hey, I don't know this answer, but let me find out the why behind it. I really like that answer.
Well, sometimes they're asking a question, and this is where we can kind of like skew more into like a cybersecurity question, right? They might be asking a question about, and this would be an easy question, so I'm just throwing it out there, but like, are you FedRAMPed, or are you on the FedRAMP roadmap, or what does that look like? There's a lot of salespeople out there that don't know the answer to those questions, or if you're going through the process, they don't have the ins and outs of it. Like maybe someone in my role might have kind of in those positions. But let's say you're asked that question, you don't know the answer. If you start probing a little bit, you might get to understand that FedRAMP isn't necessarily a requirement they have to worry about. They just think they do, right? They might not understand the data boundary, and you can help educate them on that and say, okay, tell me what type of data it is that you're holding within said boundary. Tell me, and let's kind of bring up what this architecture looks like to see if it ever flows inside, outside, whatever. But the data might not necessitate it. So getting to that, then you understand the why. Maybe the why is just a sort of a CYA checkbox.
Good point.
And it's unnecessary. But at the same time, you can also come back with understand that it might be in there anyway because of that reason. And then you can help them understand the roadmap. But it shows them that you're understanding kind of where they are on their journey and kind of where they're trying to go. And sort of operationally what their business looks like. What is the type of data? And that could actually help unlock other aspects of a conversation that hadn't been unlocked yet. So that's why questions become really important. That
is a really good point. I like that answer as well. Really like that answer. And I'm sticking with the why. I'm still stuck with the why there. And we're talking about cybersecurity. So I'm curious as to why cybersecurity impacts the customer journey and the customer experience. From that perspective, why is that so impactful? I know we talk about cybersecurity a lot from CMMC, the cybersecurity maturity model, which is kind of happening right now.
Real fast 5 times.
Absolutely. You just mentioned FedRAMP. There's all these things that are happening, but why is that impacting the customer experience?
Yeah, I mean, really, really good question. And I think of cybersecurity as one of those horizontal layers. You think of the programs, think of things like service delivery that are trying to happen. There's even operational things like human capital management and other pillars. Cybersecurity to me is a horizontal. It goes across all of them. I can start, or I start some of my conversations with customers saying, I can't start having this conversation with you without talking about cybersecurity first. Because when they're trying to get some of the value that Adobe unlocks for them, things like personalization at scale for their citizens. And I'll give you an understanding of scale. I mean, Adobe did the very first back in 2020 when COVID hit, everything shifted digital, right? Census had never had a fully digital census query in the history of the United States. And Adobe was able to create the very first all digital census for the government. That scale was 330 individuals, or 330 million individuals, 53 different language translations. And you're trying to personalize all of those at that level of scale. And anybody who works in government understands like scale is one of the biggest check boxes you need to show to be able to do this in this space. So you're talking about the largest scale. And then across that scale, that's 330 million individual data points, right? PII for all of those folks.
Absolutely.
So now you see why cybersecurity becomes so important. Another area that we look at is especially, well, I mean, this goes across all layers of government, but when we look at things like a state government portal, there's a reason why strategically having an identity verification layer is becoming prerequisite to doing any of this. Getting outside of things like KVAs or knowledge-based answers. They're so easy. Those are so easy to hack into. So having more sophisticated identity verification to prevent fraud, to prevent identity theft, all of those things become so vital. So when you're delivering the services that Adobe is helping modernize, and you're doing it at that scale, and it's some of the most important services that somebody could get, you're talking about, is my family going to be able to eat, right? Am I going to get unemployment insurance from this vendor? Being able to protect not only the individual's information, but to protect the program funding and making sure that's not going out to bad actors. All of that becomes, I mean, not only imperative, but that's why it's prerequisite, right? You have to kind of lay down the law when it comes to that type of stuff. And then we can get into some of the challenges around, I mean, during COVID, I think we saw a lot of programs getting pushed out as fast as possible, right? One of my buddies, Matt O'Neill, who I've had on the podcast, and he was head of fraud investigations for the U.S. Secret Service at the time during COVID. And some of the stories that he can tell are incredible, but just he will speak ad nauseum about why it's so important not have a spray or like a pay and chase type of mentality where you're like, okay, just let it all out and then we'll go chase down the bad actors later on. You can get it all out at speed, right? But also contextually make sure that the right people are getting access to it. So that's really where we're at right now, and how technology can facilitate those types of things. I think fraud prevention in programs is absolutely vital, and something we look at Adobe too.
There's quite a few things, especially around the emerging threats, things that are happening in fraud. How are you keeping up with all of these? Because
I mean,
it's quite a few areas.
when I get really curious about something, that's when I look and see who's really smart in this area. I bring them on my podcast and I ask them questions, right? That's one. But I do a lot of reading. I mean, my days start at 4 a.m. And I mean, you and I, again, we were talking about being parents earlier. You have to manufacture time if you want time to do some of those things, especially having 3 kids and you having 3 kids. So being able to do that, you have to be up early. You have to be able to do, and that's what I spend some of that time doing is reading. When I'm working out, listening to podcasts. When I'm walking the dog, and I will go through queries and identify like certain areas that I want to learn more on. One of the ones I'm trying to get smarter on right now is agentic AI, right? That new evolution in autonomous artificial intelligence that to me can really reshape how the mission of government is done, both internally and externally. It's really cool. But learning more and more so I can have more efficacy as I'm having a conversation with customers about it. So that's, I think reading, I think listening, asking questions like I know you and I talked about earlier, all areas. Stay curious. That's the trick. And always wanting to be learning more about things. I try not to have the same type of mentality that like they lay down with like, oh, my dad, the computer is what it is. And like, no, I want to learn more about things that come out. I want to stay sharp on all these things and not just say, let it go over my head and I don't really need it. No, I want to know if I really don't need it or not. I need to know about it, but I'll dive into it first. So that's been really helpful.
Absolutely. I'm the same way. Day starts at about 4. I'm listening to various things as I'm working out or on my walk in the morning. And trying to figure out, then I needed to start taking notes. I found out, of course, because I'm getting old and forgetting, I needed to start taking notes on
idea.
Yeah.
Slackbot. I open up Slack on my phone and I'll voice to text like a note while I'm listening because it stops the podcast and I can remember and then I can come back. Because I'm the same way. If I leave my house and go for a walk, if I'm walking the dog or something, and I need to remember something, I will not remember it when I get back. And it'll drive me nuts. Slackbot has been huge.
Same. And I started to notice that all of my ideas and everything that I was really curious about was coming to me in certain areas or doing mundane tasks. That could be taking out the trash, that could be on a walk or something like that. And then I'm like, I forgot it. So I really needed to start taking notes on things that I wanted to follow up on. So I'm right there with you.
You'll appreciate this then. I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine and I was saying one of the challenges that I have is because I very much pride myself in trying to find inspiration from things that are non-traditional, right? Mm-hmm. So thinking about like a book that might be talking about something else, but trying to weave some of the thoughts around that into what I'm doing. So like one example is I love the book Atomic Habits. I absolutely love it. One of my favorites. That's a great book. I've gone through it multiple times. And I've taken some of the strategies that James Clear uses for us to develop habits and kind of wove it into some of the talk tracks that I have with customers around the best way to help them drive adoption of new technology or whatever it is internally. So finding non-traditional ways to kind of relate. And what'll happen to me on a very regular basis, I could be listening to a book, I could be listening to a podcast, and the author will say something or the host will say something and I'll start thinking about it and I'll latch onto it. And then I'll start thinking and 5 minutes will go by and I realize I wasn't listening to what just happened.
Same.
And my buddy goes, that's okay. That's the point. Just let those thoughts sort of wash over you. You were meant to have a catalyzing thought in that moment. It doesn't mean you have to like hurry back and listen to all of it. Just continue listening. But like that was the point, and that's what you were supposed to latch on to that day. And I thought that's really helped me. I would always be like, oh man, and then I'd lose my other thought. And so yeah, my brain will wander and try to connect dots and things, and that helped relieve some of that pressure.
That does help because that happens, and I feel like I'm doing a disservice by not listening. Like I missed something in that podcast, so that does help out. That also happens to me during meditation, also. But I've learned that it's okay. It's okay. You can get back to your intention.
Yeah.
So
tell me a little bit. I'm going to shift in real quick because this is it's one of the challenges of being a host of a podcast is I come up with questions. You mentioned meditation. How did you get into meditation? Because I can sit with my thoughts, and I ran for a long time, like really long distances, and wouldn't listen to music, and it would sort of be meditative, but I could never just like sit and think. I needed to be doing something, either consuming information and like we were just talking about and processing it, or doing something physical and doing it. Just the idea around sitting was hard. But I listened to folks like Jay Shetty and others that talk about meditation and how powerful it can be. And sometimes either clearing your head or even just being alone with your own thoughts is challenging enough, and kind of doing that. How did you sort of gravitate into meditation, and kind of what have you felt it brought to you?
Interesting question. So
am I the first guest to flip the script?
Yeah, you are. you
Occupational hazard, man.
That's a good question. I started probably about, this is 2025. Wow, it's been 7 years now. 7 years. And I kind of fell into it by accident, to be quite honest. I've always noticed that others may have tried meditation. They said you should try it. I never really did. And one day after my workout, I was stretching and then I just sat up. I kind of sat up, closed my eyes, and then just took some deep breaths. And I started to just take deeper breaths, calm myself, and think about the day and be grateful about what was going to happen that day. It wasn't going to be a good day, but I was telling myself, you know what? I'm grateful for this opportunity.
You were sort of pre-filming.
Yes. I'm grateful for the stress that is about to come, because this is going to make me a better person. The challenges that I'll face, I'll go through this and come out better on the other side. And that's when I started. And it was about 10 minutes. And then I looked up and said, you know what? Maybe that's what it is. So I talked to one of my friends. Yeah. I was like, maybe that's it. And I started out with 5 minutes. that kind of progress to 10 minutes, and anywhere between 5 to 20 is a sweet spot for me. But that is what happens for me. As soon as sometimes when I start to meditate, I start to think about other things. Food, because I'm thinking about when I can eat, but it helps me out in terms of, number one, just really the gratitude at the start of my day. And this usually happens after my workout because I'm already tired, and I can really calm myself and get some good deep breaths and think about the day.
You got all those good vibe workouts going.
Absolutely. Think about the day, be grateful for what I have already. I always think about, if you can't be grateful for what you have currently right now, how would you be grateful for what you want? So that's something that's always stuck with me, that to be grateful and just to show that attitude of gratitude. Yeah, but that started about 7 years ago.
I think about it too. I remember, you see this type of quote all the time, but where you are, someone would dream to be.
Absolutely.
Right? No matter where you are, there's somebody that would dream to be there. So I think like staying focused on that type of perspective and being, or having that level of gratitude for kind of not only kind of where you are, but sometimes it's good. And I've always been really poor about this, taking stock at the work it took to get to where you are too. Because I think anybody who gets to a certain point, one, never feels like there's a destination.
That's right.
You're always moving uphill. You're always trying to move uphill, or you're always at least moving, but never have the ability to take stock at the level of effort that you put in to get to where you are. And I've known this about myself for a really long time, because I grew up playing sports. In high school, I played varsity football, varsity basketball, but varsity soccer was my main. Like, soccer was my main thing. And I played Division I in college, and I actually played professionally for a short stint. And the feeling that I got from soccer was almost like that. You can never quite satiate what you're looking for. A win was a relief. It wasn't like a celebration. It was just a relief, because it meant the work you put in wasn't in vain. And a loss was just like, so I don't want to say like, it wasn't disheartening as much as it was just so motivating to just turn things around and say, no, we're going to do better now. Right. But there was never a motion where it was like celebration, or if it was very short-lived. And I think I learned when I started coaching that I needed to, even if I didn't change how I thought, even if that was still the feeling that I had, I had to know that not everybody thinks that way. And it can be really demoralizing to a culture if you're not celebrating the wins, even if they're small wins, celebrating the wins, and you got to build on those.
Very
and that
true.
To me translates, and it has translated for me in the workplace, because when you lead people, if everything is go, 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 that might work for you. And it does work for me. I've worked with leaders that have been like that. And you know what? I thrive in those cultures. I don't need to like celebrate those things or ring the bell or do those things. But you know what? Just because other people want that, it's not a bad thing. And you need to understand the people that you have on your team and create that type of culture. So to me, it's really important to take that look back and see like, hey, look how far we've come. And it wasn't all by accident. And that's something you can have gratitude for, is that
Absolutely.
You are capable of working hard, doing hard things, being successful, and then taking that next step forward.
100%. Those small wins, you got to celebrate. You got to celebrate those small wins.
Yeah.
That's, even throughout this entire conversation, it's been what I've noticed, and what keeps coming up, Brian, is you're very self-aware, whether that is in the workplace or even coaching. You're self-aware of things that a team may need, or self-aware of how you may think according to the team and what could be helpful or damaging to the team. And that's something that not everybody has.
We're like a lot of us that are type A, and my wife's very type A too. I think I'm very self-aware of the flaws. and really not aware all the time of the positives, which is why with our kids, we try to help them see some of the things, some of the goodness, right, that they bring, and make sure we call it out. Just this morning, one of the things that I'm a big, like, make your bed in the morning person, right? Every day religiously, and trying to pass that on to my kids. And Elias, our 11-year-old, has gotten really good about making his bed. Now it's tied to allowance, but sometimes you have to incentivize to get
Absolutely.
Right? And he does other things to do it, but he's been very religious about it, and he has not complained. And what I've noticed is that it started with the activity of, right, kind of throwing the sheets on, throwing the pillows on, and then kind of like straightening a little and then going, to now he takes his time and it's almost, I want to say he's taking pride in it. I don't know necessarily if he is or not, but the level at which he's doing it is far greater than when he started. And it was this morning that I looked at him and said, hey, I just want to let you know, I've told you that I appreciate your making your bed every day. I want you to know it's gotten better from a quality perspective too. Everything looks a lot nicer. Sometimes it's that reminder, that reinforcement. That's all people need to continue to that and to want to continue to grow and be even better and better. And just little things like that, acknowledging him. So letting him know, like, you're doing a good thing and kind of where those good things are, and not always saying like, hey, you didn't make your bed well the other day. It doesn't have to be a negative. I think reinforcing those positives can help him now. Now he's benchmarking. And now it's probably not going to get less than that, and he'll want to continue to make it better. And that's really what you're trying to do with individuals. I wish I was better at that with myself. For me, it's more negative driven. It's more the stick than the carrot. But you have to know, and you, like I said before, you have to also think about, even within your family, the culture that you want to have within your home. And if you can instill that level of awareness of, okay, I know where I struggle, but I also know what I'm good at too, at a young age, I think that'll breed confidence.
Absolutely. That positive reinforcement is so important. And I'm very similar to you. The way that I talk to myself, I was talking to Dan Harris, author of 10% Happier. And he kind of said, you know what, here's a trick for you. Talk to yourself like you would talk to a friend. So the advice that you would give to your friend and the way that you would give your friend that advice, you should talk to yourself like that. So
because we don't treat ourselves well, like we really don't.
Correct.
And if if my inner monologue around things was how I spoke to my friend, I wouldn't have a lot of friends. And being able to like understand that, my wife would say the same thing. Like, she doesn't treat herself well either. Her inner monologue is always like, need to be better, need to be better, need to be better. Why'd you do it this way? Why'd you do it that way? And that's not how we treat other people. So I think that's really good advice.
Yeah. Yeah. I got one last question for you, Brian. And this particular question is important to me because I'm always curious about how individuals prevent stress and burnout. What are some things that you do, activities that could be getting out, taking a walk, or bike riding, or painting, or something like that? So I'm very curious what you do to prevent stress and burnout in this arena, because it is busy all the time. There's always something to be done. Like, I can't remember the last time I ended a day and said, I got everything done. Like, I have nothing to do until tomorrow. I'm always leaving something.
I end my days making a list for what I have to load up tomorrow to do. So I make sure like I'm knocking them off. So I agree. And the beginning of this answer won't shock you. It's something I was really bad at for a long time, taking care of myself, because of that mentality that I know you and I share, which is like, I'll be fine. Just go, just keep going. Reinforced through sports, especially through injury. When I played soccer, I was a goalie, and like, if I had a broken finger, didn't matter, played. Like, I played my freshman year of college on a broken foot. Like, you just go, and you have that mentality of your body will heal, you keep going, right? Or it might be hard right now, but we'll hit a lull at some point, so just don't stop. That lull might never come, but you keep telling yourself that. It makes it easier to keep going until December of 2020 and went for a run. And I'm somebody who's, ever since I stopped playing soccer after college, I got into running when I was in college. It's just a way to continue to stay in shape. Again, I always took a lot of pride being a goalie, and I could basically outrun everybody on the team in long distances. And so got into that, and then picked up racing after college. So, and after I finished playing, so I would do like anything from a 5K to a marathon. And I was running every day. And around this time, right, like this, again, this is coming up on, I guess, 4.5, 5 years ago now. The day before, I remember Elias got on a bike. We went for a ride. He would ride his bike with me, and I would run, like, knock out 5 miles, and we'd come around. And very next day, went for a run, and I couldn't make it 100 yards without just stopping and wheezing. Couldn't catch my breath. And the feeling was, think of like lining up at a start line and running 100 yards as fast as you possibly could. And you get like the can't catch my breath. You see spots because you're lacking oxygen. And like that was running 100 yards at just a casual jog pace, starting off my warm up on a run.
Wow.
So I'm like, something's wrong. Maybe I'm getting a cold, right? Trying to rationalize it. So I keep going, keep running. And I made it probably like running, then walking, then running, then walking, probably made it about a mile, which is crazy to think of now, like in the kind of how I was feeling. I was like, something's definitely off. I'm not sick. I've been sick before, but I know what that's like. So I walked home and I looked at my wife and said, something's really wrong. I need to figure this out. And went to urgent care that day. They ran a myriad of tests. And remember, just again, to remind people contextually, this was December of 2020. So one of the first things I did, I remember this, I did a telemedicine telehealth call.
Yep.
And I remember the doctor was adamant it's COVID. Adamant it's COVID. And that's sort of where my brain was going too. Like maybe this is COVID. I hadn't had COVID yet. So maybe this is COVID. And I went to urgent care, and they did everything but test for COVID there, by the way. He did like a x-ray of my chest to check for pneumonia or collapsed lung. He did a couple other tests, and he said, we're not sure exactly what it is. It could be COVID. My recommendation is maybe go to the ER. They can test you there and run more tests. So I went straight from urgent care, went to the ER, and I was there for a few hours, and they ran a battery of tests and couldn't figure out what it was. In hindsight, had they run this one test, it would have found it, but they didn't. But went through that whole process. They started saying that it could just be, like, they started asking me questions about how's work. And I said, well, I mean, it's the middle of the pandemic, work in technology. It's stressful. There's a lot going on, long days, but like I've never struggled with, one, anxiety from work, or two, like having a work-life balance. I've always been able to navigate those things pretty well. So went home thinking it was anxiety, thinking, okay, I don't know, maybe this is how it feels. I don't know. So I kept running, kept doing that thing, and it would get better and worse and better and worse for about a year. And I'll tell you, to my wife's persistence, I'll call it persistence, she would tell me all the time, you need to go figure this out. Like, this is not right. This has to be more than just that. Finally went to some specialists. This is a long story, so I apologize for.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
But went to, knowing it was like messing with my heart. And when it started getting bad was I couldn't walk up the stairs. I couldn't read a book to my daughter without catching my breath. Like it was bad.
That's serious.
And finally I was like, okay, I'll relent. I'll go do what I never do, and I'll go. So we went to one cardiologist. The problem was I was in great shape, and I had been running still all the time. So they put me on a treadmill and were testing my cardio numbers. And they were like, yeah, we think it could be that, but like you wouldn't be able to do this if you had like X. So we're not sure really what's wrong. So like, because of my fitness levels, it was throwing it off. So I got a second opinion there. Went to a second cardiologist. They ran a battery of tests. They sent me to a pulmonologist. They ran a battery of tests. And I still remember this day. I was walking into the pulmonologist's office, and they had like, when I say a battery test, they did a echocardiogram, which is basically an ultrasound of your chest, of your heart.
Yep.
So they went through an echocardiogram. I had 2 of those to kind of shape it. And what they found was pulmonary hypertension, and they couldn't figure out why, right? So they saw like my heart was dilating and there was problems there. And obviously there's an issue. We just don't know what's causing it. And that's what sent them to the pulmonologist. Then they did a CT scan with dye to kind of figure out kind of everything. And I remember walking into the pulmonologist's office. I was in the parking lot, and I got a call from my cardiologist. And normally it's the office. It was like literally my cardiologist, her cell phone calling me. So I was like, oh no. But I picked up the phone. I've never been so happy to get bad news in my life, because I finally knew exactly what it was, which was I had pulmonary embolisms all throughout my lungs. And basically what was happening was my heart was trying to pump blood into my lungs, and all of these essentially blood clots were preventing it from flowing. And that was causing pulmonary hypertension, which is why I could barely breathe, why my heart was like racing all the time. So immediately went on blood thinners, and haven't had a problem, knock on wood, ever since.
That's good to hear.
Long story though, to basically say that was the kick in the, you know what, to say you need to start taking care of yourself, right? It was 2020, so I was late 30s. I'm turning 42 this year, so 37, 38 at the time. And one of those things where you look around and you look at your kids and you say, like, I used to be able to say it's just me, and it's not just me anymore. And I need to take care of myself for them, physically and mentally, right? Since then, I still fall back into old habits. Like, I'm not perfect, and I'm not saying like that story and now I take great care of myself all the time. But it is the story that I need to tell myself when I'm like, you need to just go, right? You need to go do it. So as everybody can see, I'm fair skinned and played at sports my whole life. Never went to a dermatologist to get skin checked. And that was, you know what, this is going to be part of that. And I went, ended up having 3 skin cancers, nothing like crazy serious, but 3 that had to be cut out of my arm that could have gotten serious. And I go every 6 months now, very religiously, to do those types of things. Mental health, like I don't run as much anymore, but I walk every day. That's where listening to podcasts, listening to books, continuing to like consume good information. And another good piece of advice, guys, what you put into your brain is where your thoughts are going to be.
Yes.
So be very conscious about what you're putting in. So I was very conscious of that. You and I, again, before we pressed record, we were talking about all the reading and listening we do around parenting and that kind of stuff. So just being very intentional about your mental health too was also important. So just, I think it was one of those, like, I needed that. I'm the type of person that needed that to be able to start taking care of myself. But now it's a focus. And I think, like I mentioned, the things I do is like, I need physical activity. So I start my day off. It has to be, I do a workout like weights, and then I'll walk 2.5, 3 miles. I need to be active and doing something. I'll do runs every once in a while, but like I was running like marathons in like 3:15, 3:30.
Wow.
And now
I'm really running.
I'm not trying to like pound pavement anymore. I just, every once in a while, I like to get out and for a run, but the walks, I'm enjoying the pace of listening and taking things in. And we got a dog last fall, and now he goes with me on the walks and kind of wear him out. I think it's just, what I do is I try to keep my finger on the pulse of what I need at any given point. And I try to listen to my wife too when she says things seem out of kilter, right? I think that's those individuals in your life that can say like, hey, you seem stressed. Is everything okay? Because sometimes we don't always recognize it. So surrounding yourself with people like that, like mine's my wife. One of my best friends, Alex, is the same way. He and I can sit down and talk about anything. I think having those types of people, and I think guys don't do as good of a job of doing that. I think women have empirically done a much better job about sharing. And I think there's therapy in that, even with your friends. Even if it's venting, you're not looking for an answer, but being able to share how you're feeling about things. And I think surrounding yourself with people, especially other guys, other dads that understand kind of where you are in your life, whether it's work or whether it's parenting, and can kind of be there as a sounding board to to one, put you in your place when you need it, but also two, kind of be there to say, yeah, hey, whatever you need, I'm here. So I've tried to be really conscious about like listening to those people too. So it takes a village, man. It takes a village, but I'm grateful for my wife's persistence on getting me to go and focus on it. And now it's definitely something I do much more intentionally.
Man, I love that story. Love it. Love it. Love it. More so because, it's a journey.
Yeah.
It is really a journey, and how you arrive to where you're at right now. As I asked you that because I'm about definitely huge on and heavy on the wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness, emotional wellness. I mean, I always talk about, we recommend pretty strong passwords, but I'm trying to get our health and wellness as strong as those passwords that we recommend.
Yeah. Yep.
So I definitely love to hear that story, especially about that journey. I have a similar journey around that, but I'm very happy to hear that, you're really caring for yourself.
We might need to get you on my podcast, and you can tell that story.
Absolutely.
We'll open up some time and we'll tell that story. Stay tuned, everybody.
Well, Brian, thank you for today. I really appreciate your time, because the time is precious. That's really what it's about.
Yeah.
Spending time here. So I really appreciate your time today. Thank you for your insight, your self-awareness, the information that you talked about, what you do and how you do things, and to include your podcast. So I'm looking for another episode there. I'm always listening to that. And to all our listeners here, thank you so much for tuning in. We appreciate you today, and be on the lookout for the next episode with the CyberGov podcast. Come listen to us on YouTube, LinkedIn, or your favorite podcasting app.